Welcome to the virtual campground.
Hi.
We are here today to talk to you about Yosemite. We are right here to talk to you about Yosemite National Park. One of our favorites.
First.
It's going to be our first in a series, I hear.
Of national parks. Why not?
Why not? We love Yosemite. I specifically love Yosemite. It's one of my favorite places on earth.
It is his favorite.
From a photography perspective, it is a target-rich environment, as they say. So, yeah, we thought.
In other words, it's a photographer's paradise.
That's right. So we thought we would just share with you some of our thoughts from our trips there.
Yeah, so if you're planning to go to Yosemite this year, next year, whenever year, we thought we would share with you some of the we think are the best spots. And Barry can share with you some ways and thoughts on how you can capture a great photograph of Yosemite National Park. So why is this your favorite?
Well, it's just it's beautiful scenery, and it is a compact area that has a lot of shooting opportunities. It's probably the most concise way to say it.
Camera shooting.
Yeah. So lots of photography opportunities. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a target-rich environment. It's just when you drive into the valley, just everywhere you turn, there's something beautiful to see and photograph. So
yeah, I mean, it's really got something for almost every kind of photographer too. Certainly amateurs, but if you're professional and you want to do wildlife or landscaping, the huge rocks and the waterfalls, I mean, there's a lot of different topographies and microclimates in Yosemite that offer you lots of different options.
Yeah.
So what was the thing that first drove you to Yosemite? Do you remember?
Well, like many photographers, it was Ansel Adams. I read his book many years ago and biography, and it was inspired me. And he used to bug his parents to take him to Yosemite. He read Gallen's book about Yosemite, Hutchings' book about Yosemite, where when Hutchings was at the turn of the century just trying to convince people to come as a tourist destination. Okay. This was back when, maybe 40 people got to see Yosemite. So he started bothering his parents, and so they went in 1917. They took a family trip to Yosemite, and his father handed him a Kodak. And that is where it all started. Yeah, and he eventually went to work there, and
he became part of the Sierra Club, and he went on camping trips and took a lot of photos. That's when he started getting into the medium format, because he found out that little tiny camera couldn't do very much of anything. Yeah.
So as a matter of fact, there is a gallery down in the valley, still with his name on it, and
you can buy prints.
Yeah, you can buy
that were actually
prints
made by one of his assistants.
That's right. And we actually, little known fact, we actually have one of Ansel Adams' prints.
We do.
Used to hang in our sticks and bricks, and we have it in storage now.
Somewhere.
It was printed by one of his printing apprentices. Say that really fast.
That would be difficult to say really fast.
So that was my connection originally with Yosemite, and then we went years ago with our boys and had a great time seeing it the first time, and I've been back several times since.
We've been there numerous times. Only once since we've been in the RV, I think, because we've been there numerous times. We've been there. You went to a photography workshop once, and then we went with the boys. But this last time we went, we were living in the RV, but we didn't actually stay in the RV while we were in Yosemite. We visited it while we were in a campground, not pretty far, but it was about an hour to the entrance or so. So we ended up staying in an Airbnb kind of thing. But more on that later, I guess. Yeah. But so when do you think is the best time to visit Yosemite?
There's not a bad time to visit.
No.
It really comes down to from a photographer perspective. From a pure tourist perspective, I mean, everyone goes in the spring and summer.
Summer especially.
Yeah,
that's when
summer
they get
is
millions.
just insane.
I mean, they get probably 4 million visitors a year. I think the vast majority of them come in the summer. But yes, so summer. So the good thing is, like spring is a really pretty time in Yosemite because, of course, everything starts blooming.
Dogwoods are blooming.
Right. And the waterfalls tend to be at their peak in like May to June because, of course, that's when the snow starts to melt. So that's a peak time. May is probably a great time to be there because it's right on that cusp of before the crowd gets too heavy. We were there Memorial Day weekend, and you could kind of see that it had started. The weekend start. We got there early, and Weekend started out pretty okay, and then got a little bit more crowded as the weekend progressed. Then you get into summer, and as you said, it starts being peak people.
If you have the option to avoid summer in Yosemite, I would absolutely do it.
Yes, because it can also be hot.
Oh, yeah, it can be very hot in the valley. And that's what people will say is that if you have to be in there in the summer,
go higher.
Go higher elevation. But if you're going into the valley, I mean, everybody needs, if you haven't been to Yosemite, everybody needs to go do the valley thing. But go there early in the morning. Get there way early. Get there before the crowds. Go see the sights, and then get out. You'll see in our outro, we'll have a little video I did about my hike up the Mist Trail. And really great hike, but I talk a little bit about the crowds that were there. Even when I didn't get there early enough, but Saturday morning, and it was just at chaos by 9:30 or so.
And that was early in May.
Yeah, that was early in May. So
weekends are going to start getting busy in May as well. So yeah, if you can go weekdays and not in the summer, that's the premium time. Fall is a great time to because of the autumn colors. Your waterfalls are probably down to a trickle because by that point most of it has melted away. And
you get some good storms that come through the valley. So from a photography perspective, tunnel view, and
because that'd be cool.
Yeah. There's some really nice views that give you a whole view of the valley. Those are great during storm season.
And we haven't been. Well, we were there in the winter once. It was snowy, but it wasn't snow. And I think that would be an interesting time to go. But you have a pretty limited area that you'd be able to visit, the valley for sure. But most of the rest of it, the roads would be probably closed. But I think that could be really fascinating to see Yosemite just in a blanket of snow. And also, of course, the last 2 weeks of February are a very popular time because that is when, if it's going to happen, the Firefall will happen. And
Horsetail Falls.
Yep.
Yeah, Horsetail Falls is a fall that... During that it's about a 2-week period in fall where the sun hits in February, that hits the falls just perfectly, and so it looks like a horse tail that's on fire. It's pretty amazing. And I hear that photographers will line up hours and hours and hours in advance to see it.
It will be absolutely the places we booked up, hotels and areas, and photographers, they'll be jockeying very early for a spot to get that perfect picture. Yeah,
I've seen lots of beautiful images of it. I think going during the winter would be one of my bucket list photography items to get there. It does take a lot more effort to get around, so it's a little more of a challenge.
A little bit more of a challenge. And so speaking of getting around, Yosemite, you absolutely need a car. I mean, to really get to most of the spots you would want to go to. If you only want to do the valley, during non-COVID times, there is usually a shuttle, but last I checked, there was still not.
No, and certainly when we were there wasn't. And the shuttles, though, were great when they were running. I took our bike into the park, and you can rent bikes there. But there is a bike trail that goes through part of the valley, and then I went ahead and got on the road, which I don't know if I would recommend during really busy times.
Yeah.
But I did the whole valley on the bike, and that was fun.
Yeah, so there is a 13-mile hike you can take around the valley that hits most of the big spots. It's really pretty flat, and it offers many options for shade. So that's a pretty easy hike from a perspective of a hike. I mean, I think of it really more as a walk. But it does also have some offshoots that you can do a little bit more going up a little higher. So a little bit more hikes. Of course, Yosemite is well known for backpacking the high country, the high Sierra, and the backcountry. And then, of course, a lot of rock climbers. Which is kind of a fun thing when I'm down on the ground, to look up at El Capitan and see. You could see the little tiny people climbing up the rock during the day, and then at night you'd see their lights because they're hanging, off the rock,
spending the night on the side of that rock.
If you ask me, and then if you are there in the winter, you can ski. There is a downhill place at Badger Pass, and of course there's cross country skiing. But of course we go for the photography.
That's right, exactly.
We being the royal sense of we. I go to look around. So, Yosemite, of course, has been around forever.
Well,
Mostly, yeah. I mean, since the Ice Age.
A long time.
Yeah. And if you are into geology, more power to you, first of all. And second, you will get a lot of geological findings while you're in Yosemite. A lot of education there, and you can certainly go very deep into rock and how things are formed. That's not my thing, so we won't be doing that today. But I do think it's really interesting because Yosemite is, I mean, it's huge, obviously, but and the Yosemite Valley is only like
it's a tiny part of it.
Yeah,
like 3%.
Yeah, exactly, of the whole place. But you can, from the time that you get, you go from the valley up to Tioga Pass, which is like at 10,000 feet. That's the same in microclimates as if you went from Mexico to Alaska in a day.
That's amazing.
Isn't that crazy? So there's like, I don't know, 6 climates that people that invent these things do, and Yosemite has 5 of them, plus they have tons of microclimates because you're doing it so fast that there's little microclimates kind of overlapping. So there are so many species of plants and trees there. In fact, there's about 200 species of plants you can only find in Yosemite. Wow. Isn't that crazy?
Who knew?
I did not know that until I knew that. So now I know that. So the first hotel didn't even come until 1857.
Really?
Obviously, Native Americans had been there. There was a tribe, the Awanki. I'm not saying that right, am I? No.
I'm sure. I'm not.
I am sure not either. But it's the one that the hotel's named for. Awanaki.
Wawani?
Is that it?
Wawani.
Okay.
I think.
We'll
put it in the show notes.
Yes. So they lived there for many, many, many years. Very protected. It's like a fortress if you're inside Yosemite.
Is. Yeah. Yeah, you've got to really want to get there.
You do. So they
back in the day anyway.
So the only people that had gotten anywhere close to it in the early 1800s had just kind of seen it, but they couldn't figure out how to get down to it. So it wasn't until a couple of gold miners were tracking a grizzly bear and they sort of happened upon the entrance to Yosemite.
Wow.
That a white man actually saw the valley. So that was kind of interesting. And then from them seeing it, it probably only took so many years, I don't know, not even
Once
50 years,
right.
to build this first hotel. But really, even then, because there weren't good roads, because so many factors, it was pretty low traveled.
Right.
You really had very few visitors or tourists, though there were people trying, like Mr. Hutchings, trying to convince people that it was the place to come. And then by the 1860s, people were saying, because people were coming and it was getting kind of messed up. I mean, even back then, people were polluting.
Right.
So some people got together and convinced the government to put this land aside just for recreational purposes. And that was signed by Abraham Lincoln.
Wow.
I know.
That was a long time ago.
Right in the middle of the Civil War. So that was the first time any land had been set aside for public recreation, natural resources anywhere in the world. And so it sort of quickly gained speed. But it took until the turn of the century for it to become a national park.
Okay.
And that was by the work of course, John Muir.
John Muir. A lot of trails named after him.
Lots of things that are named after him. He really campaigned for it, and they got a part of Yosemite named into a national park, but then the valley was still run by the state. So when the first grant happened, that was actually California ran it instead of the nation. So then he continued to campaign because the state of California wasn't really quite taking care of it the way he thought it should to be a national resource. So he kept fighting for that, and then that's when President Roosevelt came to visit, and then he went camping with John, and the rest is history, as they say, and it became a national park in 1906.
Yeah, there is I can't remember under which falls, but there is, when you stop at one of the parking areas, there's a sign where it shows where they
camped here.
They camped, yeah.
Instead of George Washington sleeping here, Teddy Roosevelt camped here.
Yeah, kind of fun.
Yes, that's a kind of close to the beginning where you came in, if I remember right. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so there's your little history lesson for today.
Dropping the knowledge. Nicely done.
Thank you. There's so much about this. You can read lots and lots of different books, but give you a little bit of background. And again, it's one of those moments where you and I have talked about this before. People like John Muir, Galen Clark, Mr. Hutching, all these people to have had the foresight to know, right, look what's happening. This area should be preserved for future generations, and that they did all the work to make sure that gets set aside. They probably didn't expect it to have 4 million people visiting it a year, but they certainly did the right thing. If they could see
now what it looks like, they'd be blown away.
Yes,
but we're very thankful that they had that foresight.
Yeah, because it is gorgeous, and I would hate to think that it would be something you'd only see in books.
That's right.
So, but let's talk about some of your favorite places.
Yeah, so it all starts in the valley. That's what everyone goes for. That's where the key, touristy spots are, so to speak, or the easy to get to at least. And I do recommend that if it's your first time to go to Yosemite, that you certainly go spend some time in the valley. Here's a map, and it really shows where you're coming in, and it's a big loop. They've changed some things recently because of the high traffic, but essentially it's a big loop, and if you get there early enough, you can find some parking near the visitor center, go in and spend some time there.
Definitely spend time in the visitor center. Yeah. There's a lot to do in the Valley Visitor Center area. There's a couple of museums. There is a film that they play. There's a geological exhibit that can talk to you more about geology. There's also the Ansel Adams galleries there, so you can see some of his original works, plus pick up some beautiful cards or pictures of your own. Yeah,
it's a great place to get your memento from being there.
You can also get snacks.
And there's a restaurant or two down there. It's a good place to start your adventure. And then if you don't mind walking a bunch, then that would be a great place to leave your car and just walk around the valley. Or if you have your bike around, or rent a bike. If the shuttles are operating, then those will hit all the hot spots, and very easy to hop on, hop off. So anyway, one of the things that everyone goes to see down in the valley, of course, is Yosemite Falls.
Absolutely.
This is a view far away where you can see upper and lower Yosemite Falls. This was on one of our jaunts, but this is as you walk into the trail that leads directly to the falls. This happens to be a photo I did at night, and that's lit by moonlight. But that is Yosemite Falls, and it's very close to the visitor center.
Do you know that is over 2,000 feet tall?
Oh, I didn't know.
And it drops enough water that it could fill a football stadium in one day.
Wow. How deep would the football stadium have to be?
I don't know the answer to that. I just know that it's dropping 100 cubic feet at a time.
And there you are at the bottom of lower Yosemite Falls.
Oh, there I am. Look at me. Look how big it is, and I am so tiny. And Yosemite Falls is another natural occurrence that happens there is the moonbows. You can go there during full moons in like April and May, I think.
Yep, it's well known for moonbows. You'll see all kinds of sunbows and moonbows and what have you that happened in little parts of the valley, but it's really fun to see that in the moonlight. So
Yosemite Falls is the one you walk up a little bit and then you cross a bridge, right? Yep. And so you'll see part of it where I was sitting there was kind of under the bridge.
Yep.
Okay. But you will be surrounded by many, many people. So it is absolutely a must-have to walk up there. Don't just look at it from the road. Walk up the little hike. It's not a bad hike at all.
No, it's pretty easy.
And you'll see people get out on the rocks near the falls. Feel free if you are adventurous. I did not do that. I think also it would have been a little cold.
There is a lot of mist, of course.
Yes. You will get
but you'll see people crawling all over the place.
Yep.
And there's a hike you can take that's pretty vertical. That'll take you up to the top of those falls.
Didn't do that either.
And then one of the other major rock formations in the valley is El Capitan. Deb mentioned earlier. You can't miss it. It's there on the left in this photo. This is Valley View, but it's where the hikers will hike. A lot of the climbers, rather, mountain climbers. And there's a couple that were on the rock face there.
So go back to the other picture. So that's which waterfall is that?
That is Bridalville Falls.
So that's Bridalville.
Yep.
And then you have El Capitan.
On the left, But this is one of the stops that you have to do. This is coming out of the valley on the opposite end of where all the touristy stuff is. But this is little place to stop and get a beautiful photo of the whole valley. It's called Valley View. Funny enough.
Interesting.
So yeah, those climbers, and they were gonna find a place to camp out at night somewhere, and just crazy. But there's
the first people that climbed the rock. It took them days, but nowadays people might do these rocks. They might do El Capitan, Half Dome, and El Capitan again in a day.
That's crazy.
Or go up. There's several routes you can get to the top, but the one probably best known is called the Nose, and some people can do it in just a couple hours.
What are these people thinking?
Crazy. And they sleep on there. That's the part I don't. And they have to. Do you know that when you climb El Capitan, if you're a climber, you have to take up for each day you're going to be out a gallon of water. Plus, you have to carry out any waste you create from that gallon of water.
Didn't you see? I mean, it's hard to see here, but there are 3 really big containers holding stuff for these 2 climbers. Oh my gosh, yeah.
I would barely be able to do my own weight, let alone all that.
That's very impressive.
They are impressive. It was fun to watch. There's a campground down at the bottom of the El Capitan. That Campground 4, I think it's called.
4, right.
Mostly it's climbers that stay there. They're all in tents. It looks very hippie.
Oh, yeah.
But it was so fun to drive over there and see some of them.
They'll put out rope and tight rope across, and it's just they
chatting back and forth with one another. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, a lot of fun. You asked about that fall. That's Bridalville Fall over there, and that's a very famous fall. Whenever it's running, it does run out of steam in late summer.
It does, but it goes longer than actually even Yosemite Falls because it's smaller, but it has the topography around it is more moist.
Yeah.
So it's only 620 feet instead of 2,200 feet, but it runs usually from April to June, whereas Yosemite can, or maybe even later than June, whereas Yosemite can run out, so to speak, earlier than that.
Yeah, and we've already talked about Horsetail Falls, and I don't have a good photo of that. I do have some shots of Half Dome, and that's, of course, one of the iconic Ansel Adams photos. He took hundreds of photos of Half Dome and made it famous.
Do you know, everybody calls it Half Dome because they assume that there was another half that fell off, but that is not what happened.
Nope, that's how it was from the beginning.
They say, I think there's like 20% of it has maybe fallen away, but it's not that half of it fell away. It's just some rocks that have fallen away. And Half Dome is about 4,800 feet above the valley.
Okay. Yeah, and it's parts of it have fallen off, though. I imagine that's kind of scary when that happens. But.
Now, is Half Dome the one that you wanted to try to climb?
So Half Dome is the one that's a fairly elevated hike.
I say climb, elevation, I meant hike.
Yeah, hike. I don't do climbing, not unless it's an emergency. But it's a fairly high elevation hike. You gain some elevation, in other words. But then you get to a point where it's a 40% incline, and there are cables and wood blocks in the granite.
So you're basically pulling
pulling yourself up the side of that. And yeah, I definitely want to do it. I tried to get a permit. That's not it. I tried to get a permit. Where is Half Dome? There it is. So you're going up this other side of it, and it's not here. I believe it's on the other side. So it's a little bit not quite as intense as that. But I did not win the permit lottery.
So you have to. That's one of those that you have to months in advance. You have to put in to be in the lottery, and then you get told whether or not you made the lottery or not.
And that's when the cables are up. The lottery starts when the cables are up. So at the end of the season, at the end of the hiking season, they put the cables down. They just lay the cables flat. And you can hike it anytime you want. And the cable's there, but it's just not up in a place where you could stand up and walk.
Oh, okay.
You have to hold onto the cable and keep yourself really low and kind of scramble up the side of the granite. But a lot of people will do that because you don't have nearly the crowd.
Oh, well, yes, but then it's cold and
it's cold, and they say that's one of the most dangerous times to do it because there'll be ice on the rock and makes it difficult.
That would be scary.
So one of the iconic spots that Ansel Adams made famous and you have to go see is Tunnel View. And that is on the edge of the park, or edge of the valley, I guess would be best way to say it.
It's kind of like you're leaving the valley to go into the other portion of Yosemite, more the Wawani area. And that's the tunnel, is Wawani Tunnel. So it's right before you go through the tunnel.
Yep. So it's a place to stop. There is a parking lot there. You'll see lots and lots of people in that parking lot. If you're going on a Saturday or Sunday, it's going to be
you're going to
packed.
circle for a while. But I will say this, since we went there more from a photographer perspective, not just tourist, and you wanted to hang out, so to speak. It does turn over quickly. I mean, I sat there and watched cars come in and out and in and out.
People are getting out of their car, grabbing their shot, and moving on.
So, and then there's a couple of things you can do. You can certainly, there's a ledge at the end of the parking lot that you can then look out over this valley to get this shot. You can also go up out on the back side of the parking lot as you're going towards the tunnel. There's some trash cans. Behind that, there's a good place you can kind of scramble up a little bit, up some rocks.
Carefully scramble up those rocks. If it's wet or icy, you did not hear that from us.
Yes, no.
But it's a sharp drop off, several thousand feet if you
stay...
If you stay behind those trash cans and go straight up.
On the other side, it's not too hard, and it's very peaceful. There's nobody, very few people go up there. In fact, I was up there for probably an hour, and I don't think I saw anybody. And just sat there on the rocks, and you have this beautiful view down into the valley, more across. And then, and there's also an area called Inspiration Point, which is a hike. It's a trail that goes up. Again, I think it's an area that Ansel Adams went up there as well. So you can go up there and get a view. And again, not as many people, because as we said, mostly people are just driving in, taking a shot, driving out. So if you just park and there's the parking lot that most people are at, and there's an auxiliary one right across the street. The one across the street, Inspiration Point's on that side.
Yeah, that's where the hike begins for that.
Yeah, so you can go up there and bring a chair. We went back out there for sunset, and then we stayed for the stars. So bring a chair and a blanket and some snacks, and you can have a nice little stay out there and catch the golden hour, catch just amazing views because the thing about Yosemite is, and one of the reasons you love it, weather and the sun, it just changes it so dramatically. Like this view of the valley, so different. You have a little bit of a rainbow there with the clouds, but if the sun is really shining, or as it got to be sunset, just a very
it changes
every
minute. Yeah.
We also were there, had the coolest thing. So we were there for the stars, which was fun because it's so dark. So definitely dark sky. But we saw the, I guess it was the Elon Musk. What were those things?
Oh, the satellites.
Satellites.
Yeah.
It was just this, like a pearl string of lights that just started at the horizon and then just curved over. It was crazy. Anyway.
Starlink or whatever. So that was a lot of fun. So Tunnel View, must go visit. Those were great pointers. Behind the trash can, scramble up those rocks, or go do that Inspiration.
All right. So one of the areas that you were actually, this is probably the main reason we stayed in the park, because you knew you really wanted to go to Glacier Point for sunrise.
Right.
And I didn't want to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. So we thought, let's stay closer. And so we stayed in the park so that we only had to drive an hour to get to Glacier Point.
Wasn't that bad. Oh, maybe 40 minutes, 45 minutes.
Yes.
From...
But anyway, but it was worth it. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So tell us, how did you know about that, and what was the pull for you?
Yeah, so in the photography guidebooks or whatever, as you research about Yosemite, Glacier Point comes up over and over, and it is you're essentially on top of the valley across from Half Dome, and so it just gives you a unique perspective looking down on the entire valley. And the sun rises opposite of Glacier Point, so it's just a really nice sunrise or sunset location. But we wanted to go there for sunrise.
You can see some gorgeous waterfalls from there. And it was, and if you get there at sunrise, you're probably not going to be very crowded, let me tell you. So we were there early that sunrise.
Yep. We were there. We got there when it was pretty dark, and then I don't remember anyone else being there. Maybe one or two other people.
I think there were a couple of photographers there, yeah. That was it. And we watched the sun come up over the dome. Yeah. And then we could see the falls that you hiked.
Yeah, I did not put any pictures of that in here, but yeah, you could see Vernal Falls and Nevada Falls from here, which was pretty cool. Maybe even, I can't remember if we could see Bridalville. Yeah, I think we could see Bridalville Fall from here as well. So it's just a really neat perspective of the whole valley.
Now, the tip is, so many people will go up to Glacier Point and they will essentially just drive up, take a quick snap, and drive on. Mm-hmm. Get out of your car. There's a short walk up to the actual point. Yeah. And if you're not there at sunrise, it's still worth getting up out of your car and going and seeing this view because it's just gorgeous. There is a slab, so to speak, of rock that comes out off of the point on the kind of the backside. That if you look at historical pictures of Yosemite, you'll actually see there was at one point some can girls out there doing the can. I'm not sure you should even walk out there. We did see somebody kind of crawl out there. There's signs up saying no, but somebody did it. But so do not go on to the overhang, but you'll still get gorgeous views of the entire valley area from up there without having to risk life or limb.
And you can hike up to this point from the valley floor.
Oh, you can. That's true.
Pretty elevated hike.
Yeah, we did actually meet a couple that that's what they did.
That's right.
They had been camping, I think, at one of the campgrounds in a tent, and then they hiked up to this point. Yep. I preferred the drive. It was nice.
But it is a nice place to go, especially if you do it early in the morning or late in the day. And there's a gift shop up there, and restrooms, and so it's a nice place to hang out for a couple hours and enjoy the scenery.
Do not sleep in your car, though.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're not supposed to do that anywhere in the park. But, yeah, there was a couple that was sleeping in their truck, and the ranger
saw them,
showed up.
Is that what they did? And then the ranger showed up and said, no, you're not allowed to do that. So we learned you can't sleep in your car in the park. But
not that we were going to do that.
No.
So near there, we drove a little bit further. I mean, back down, and there was a trailhead for Sentinel
Dome,
Taft
Point. Mm-hmm.
And we didn't do Taft because we heard there was still ice on the, and that's apparently a little bit more of a risky trail.
Yeah, so they had it closed, I think, because it was still icy and snowy. In fact, I think we walked a little bit on it and saw some snow.
Yeah.
So.
And the Sentinel.
That was Memorial Day weekend.
Sentinel Dome was a fairly easy hike for the most part. Mm-hmm. There was some elevation, especially at the end if you went all the way up on the dome. But it was a pretty nice hike. And
the hike itself, lovely. There was a little bit of a climb, but I mean, certainly doable. Once you got to the rock, what I would call the rock, I mean, because you kind of are coming around the bottom of it, and then you come up the side of it, and then it gets steep going up it. But it is what they call Yosemite granite, which makes it more traction. It holds traction better. Yeah, so you can walk up it much easier.
So not as slick.
Not slick. So it was really not hard to get up to the top there. We used to have that tree, and from there you could see again
some beautiful
all the way
views.
down the valley. Yeah. It's a different view because each one of these places we've gone to, you might have seen Half Dome or Cathedral Rock, but you're seeing it from a different angle, which gives it a really interesting, pretty view.
Yep, absolutely.
It is not for the folks that are maybe afraid of heights. You can go all the way to the rock, and then there's still some lovely views there and places without climbing all the way to the top rock.
Those are some of the highlights. I mean, I did do a long hike that was the Mist Trail, which is part of the John Muir Trail, which takes you to Nevada Falls and Vernal Falls. And we'll play that in the outro, my overview of that.
That's a video he did.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about what we didn't get to see that we want to go back and see next time.
So Yosemite is one of those national parks. I'll be really honest. There are some national parks I've seen once, and I'm okay. I'm good. But Yosemite, I know we'll be going back to. But I would like to go. We have yet to go during a time. I guess we'd have to almost go in August, September, just because to avoid June and July. But because I would like to do
Tioga
Road and up to the pass, and that's closed a lot of the time in the winter and spring.
Yeah.
So I think that would be really nice. There's a couple of lakes up there, Lake Lupin, Lukens Lake, and the Tenaya Lake that look really pretty. And then of course Hetch Hetchy is up there.
Yeah, Hetch Hetchy. Is it up there or is it in a different part of the park? I can't remember. Okay, so it's in that area. Mm-hmm. I've heard about it. I haven't done much research, but one of the things that fascinated me about Hetch Hetchy was people say it's as beautiful or more beautiful than the Valley of Yosemite. Mm-hmm. And it's a little controversial because California dammed it up and created, made this huge water source for But it's still apparently an unbelievably beautiful place to go visit. So
I think all of that area. I mean, then you're really getting into the meadows and just a different, because you get higher in elevation there. Mm-hmm. So certainly, if you are there during the summer, A, it's going to be less crowded, and B, it's going to be cooler than the valley. So it's worth going, a little bit in the summer for
Absolutely. That. All right. So
say somebody only has one day.
Yeah.
First of all, hard. And really, if you're going to go all the way to Yosemite,
but a lot of people do it. Yeah, a lot of people do it. They just,
day trip it.
Yeah.
So, but if you were only going to go to Yosemite for the day, we would say get there super early.
As early as you possibly can.
And do the valley first. Mm-hmm. And then head up to, what would you say, Sentinel or Glacier if they only could do one?
If they could only do one, I think it depends a little bit on their fitness level. Glacier's easy to do. You just drive up and walk 100 feet or whatever.
Centennial's a little bit harder.
Yeah, a little bit harder. And I think the views at Glacier Point are slightly better than Centennial. So I would say that.
Mm-hmm. But if you wanted to do a hike, I would do Centennial just because if you want to get out and do a pretty good hike, unless you decided to hike parts of the valley, or if you wanted to do that hike out to Mirror Lake, since apparently it's going to be evaporated within the century. But Centennial's a great spot. So you might do the valley, stop and get something at the deli for your picnic lunch, and head up to Glacier Point and have a nice little snack, and stay there to see sunset or the stars if you can even stay that long, or maybe see sunset and then go down to Tunnel View for the stars and look at the stars. You can probably find some falling stars if you stay out there long enough. It's
Tunnel View is an excellent sunset location.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. All right. So what we didn't talk about is the other part of Yosemite where we actually stayed, because there are some things to see there too.
Yeah, we stayed. That's not where we stayed. That's where we'd like to stay next time.
Yeah, if you can afford it, we absolutely suggest you stay for at least a night at the historic Wawani, which actually is now, I think, called the Majestic Yosemite Hotel because they're in some sort of copyright issue. But we did go there for a lunch and a drink. I would suggest going there for a drink for sure. And then this was the main dining hall, but there's also a really lovely lawn in the back that you can take your drink and sit there. There's also a really fun gathering room with huge fireplaces that looked really fun. So you can absolutely go into the hotel and hang out for the day or for a couple hours if you want to without having to stay there.
Yeah.
And it's very pretty, and there's also a good chocolate candy store inside this hotel.
If you do want to stay here, book far in advance and save your pennies.
Yes.
Okay. Now where we stayed was much less glamorous, but very convenient. This was actually inside the park boundary.
It was over in the Wawani section. Yep. Yeah.
So right near Mariposa Grove. And so it was pretty convenient for those things. If you wanted to go tour the Grove, this actually had a little hike that we did, the swinging bridge hike. That was right near this house. So this was a lovely place to stay.
Yeah,
got us a lot closer.
Bed and breakfast that we stayed in. It was right on a road that there was. It's like a little town within the limits of Yosemite National Park because it had a post office and school and everything.
Yeah.
So there are some year-round residents there, but we stayed in a bed and breakfast, or not a bed and breakfast, what do you call it, Airbnb there, and had a lovely long weekend. Had a nice porch that overlooked the green, the backyard and everything.
Yeah, it was a lovely place to
and
stay.
then not far was the Wawani Hotel, which was not open while we were there because of COVID, but offered very historic, looked really fun and interesting, much less grand than the Majestic Hotel, but so full of history. One of the first hotels, I think, in that area. And then around it were a lot of historical buildings, like where the cavalry had their horses, and some of the first buildings for the park superintendents and things like that. So an interesting area to visit. And then, of course, the other big draw on that area is the Mariposa Grove.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And Mariposa Grove was sadly also closed when we were there for that Memorial Day weekend, but we hiked in anyway.
Yeah, I mean there was one trail that was open, and
you could
but
hike
a lot
you were
of
allowed to hike in.
Yeah,
but you weren't able to. I mean, normally, again, this is an area to get there early because when it's open, the parking lot fills up quickly. So if you are there when that area is not open, you can park in a farther away parking lot and then walk in. But the cool thing about that was we essentially had Mariposa Grove to ourselves. There were really very few other people. So as you saw, we saw deer because they were really the only ones there. But we got to see the giant sequoias, which is, of course, the big reason to go there.
Yep, a lot of it was closed because of the storm that had gone through there. So there were a lot of trees down.
There were a lot of trees down. They had a lot of things fenced off. Yeah. But we had been there before with the boys, and so had seen it before that, and where you could walk through the trees. But even on the trip we did, because we went out and did that huge long trail, we got all the way down to the giant tree. So that was nice. It was really nice and kind of special to have it so much to ourselves.
Yep. That was really nice. All right, so let's talk about where to stay outside the park, near there. Now, there are some RV campgrounds inside the park.
Yep.
Hard to book, just like a typical, not even like a typical national park. These are so high demand.
They're almost always full from basically April to September.
Yeah, but there are some other options.
There are. The other thing to know about the campgrounds inside the park, there's no hookups at all, nothing. It is, and they also have limited generator hours. Like they have certain times of the day you can run your generator. So you want to make sure you're really aware of that. The only dump station is in the Upper Pines campground, which is also the campground that has maybe 8 spots big enough for a rig over 35 feet.
Oh, wow.
Other than that, you really have to be under 35 feet.
A lot of tents and small vans.
Yeah. So we did not try that. You do need reservations. There's one campground, I think, within the Yosemite National Park that is first come, first serve for RVs, but good luck on that. So that's just not something we ever try for in a national park to first come, first serve in a rig our size. But like I said, especially there, it really is for smaller vehicles.
Yeah.
So you can stay. There are a few campgrounds outside of the Yosemite National Park. It's really pretty few, I have to say.
There's not a lot to choose from.
Not a lot to choose from. The challenge, of course, also, especially for folks like us who are full-timers, the closer you get to Yosemite, the worse the Wi-Fi is and the worse the cell reception. Really, even in Yosemite, you can get some cell service down in the valley, and that's about it.
Specifically close to the general store or the visitor center. I was able to get a bar or two of AT&T.
That's about it. But so the parks, the other places around it, just very few. We stayed at the lakes out in Chowchilla. Which is fun to say. It is fun to say. Which is a very lovely park.
Yeah, it's a nice park. It's got a little clubhouse and a nice pool. And most of these sites seem to be owned by people, and the park was renting them out. But some of them were upgraded to really nice outside fireplaces and
kitchen area. It was all paved, lots of trees, so we had some good shade.
So we were there for a month, and it was a great place to have our base.
And there was, it's owned by the golf course next door.
Yeah, that's right.
So you could walk over to their golf clubhouse on the 18th tee, and There was a restaurant there and a bar. And if you stay at the lakes, you get a free round of golf
every day.
Yeah, we did not do that either. But
our friends did. Yeah.
He enjoyed. He went out there and did some driving.
Yeah. And he even played in a tournament out there, I think. He got some golf in. But one round a day, that would be tough.
And we met some of the golfer neighbors
People
that were
there.
Quite fun. So anyway, that would be our pick. Honestly, we looked at the campgrounds inside. They look lovely if you can stay there. If you're, from a national park campground, definitely nice, but really hard. We had found a hard time finding a campground closer than the one in Chowchilla. Yeah. Especially since for us, it's also important for you to be near a city.
Yeah, we had to be relatively close to an airport and good cell service. So
that made the lakes probably our best choice. If you have another choice closer, we would love to hear about it for the next time we go, and for the folks previewing this as well. So if you put that in the comments, we'd really appreciate it. So other things to know about Yosemite. One, you need a reservation to get in. Because of its popularity, it is one of the national parks where they are doing reservations in order to help kind of control the crowd.
During the peak period.
During peak time. So, so during the peak time. So from like May 20th until September 30th, you need to make a reservation. The reservations go on like in the middle of March for the season, but they hold back about 30% of the tickets so that people can try to get those 7 days in advance. What that means, though, is you'll be up early trying to get your ticket.
And that's a beating.
And we ended up, I tried it several times while we were there in Chowchilla for that month to see how we could get in and out. Luckily, we didn't need one before May 20th. And then while we were there at that Airbnb, we automatically had entry into the park. So if you're staying in the park, you have automatic entry. So just know that and make plans that happens. If you're going to climb, or you have a permit to climb, I should say, or if you're staying in the park, then you don't need those reservations. Otherwise, you do. It's just a $2 reservation fee, but it's important to have those to go into the park.
Yep.
Also, you can avoid having them if you get there before 6 a.m. or you get there after 4 p.m. So you can get in the park. And again, as we said earlier, it's good to get there really early, and 6 a.m. is not really that early. We, a couple of times when we were checking out areas or leaving, I think one of the times we left that area, I guess when we left from the Airbnb, it was around noon, and the line was quite long coming into the park because, there's several entries into the park, but they're just down to one lane. Yeah. So that line stretched for at least a mile or more.
Yeah, it'll get crazy. So get there early. I don't know if you've heard us, but our main advice is get there early.
We might have said that once or twice. You also need to remember there are no gas stations inside Yosemite National Park.
No, there's where did we fill up in that little
town Fish Camp.
Fish Camp, and so those little towns, as you get closer, top off, make sure you're ready to go.
Yep, Fish Camp is a great place to stay if you are trying to get into Yosemite. I don't remember there being an RV camp there, but there probably is, just one, again, without Wi-Fi and cell service. But there are some hotels, I know. The other thing to remember in Yosemite is bears.
There are bears.
There are bears there. So they are very adamant about not leaving out anything scented. No. This is when I learned that you can't even have out toothpaste. No. Because it has a scent, and that will attract a bear, which I hadn't thought about. You have to make sure that all of that's put away. You can't even leave it really in your car visible. Apparently, I guess some of these bears are smarter than the average bear and know that a cooler, even if it's empty, might have food in it. So they tell you to be really careful.
Yeah, they'll tear up your car. The other thing that we found helpful was the Just Ahead app, which we've talked about in the past. And it has
Yosemite on it, so it's great information.
It starts pretty far outside the park, so
like in Chowchilla, we turned it on.
When you have cell service, way out ahead of the park, turn it on and just leave it playing in the background, And
but you don't need self-service once it gets started.
Yeah, once you get started, it's fine. And then as you're driving closer to the park, it'll start telling you stuff. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. It's very cool. There are also the National Park Service also has an app which has some good information on it, and I think you can download things like hikes and stuff on that. So it's also a great app to use. Yeah. All right, so in addition to apps, which are great, I really like books and paper things. I know, paper things. I know. It's crazy. So this is a book that we used, Yosemite, The Complete Guide by James Kaiser. So that's got some great photographs in it, as well as great information on Yosemite's past. It's and advice on how to access a lot of the great spots in it. Yeah. I also really use the Secrets of the National Parks book that's put out by National Geographic as well. So those are two books that I really enjoy getting information out of that help for me to really make it more interesting when I visit the parks. The James Kaiser book even has pictures of a lot of the animals that you would see and the plants and flowers as well. So that's always helpful. So other advice for photographers. What would you, as a photographer, tell people when they go to Yosemite?
So there are so many things. What I did is as I did research in those books and others, I used my Google Maps, and I would pin when someone said you should go here at this time and to photograph this, then I would pin that in my Google Maps, and I have a Yosemite things to photograph map. So that helps. Some of the key things as you're coming into the park, there's a small little area that you'll see called Fern Spring. Not many people stop there, but it's a freshwater spring, and people will actually stop there and fill up their water bottles and what have you. But this was made famous by Ansel. It's just one of the little quiet spots, some dogwoods around there. So it's a really neat place, especially in the fall, if you want to capture some details of just a small little spring. But from the big picture point of view, pardon the pun.
Because, yes, there are a lot of really pretty small little areas, but the big thing about Yosemite is the big areas.
The big stuff. So we already mentioned sunrise at Glacier Point. Would highly recommend that. And then on the other side of things, sunset at Tunnel View is
over the valley.
Yeah, really popular. It's a beautiful place to see the sunset. Things change or just constantly changing as you're there throughout the sunset. And then if you check to see when moonrise is, if you are the type of photographer that's a little more technically oriented and you want to use an app like the Photographer's Ephemeris or PhotoPills, and look and see where the moon, when the full moon's going to rise, it does rise often right over Half Dome, or at least sometimes. But it will rise over the valley, and so it's a really neat, if you catch it full moon just after sunset, rising up over Half Dome, that's really, really cool.
Cool. Plus you have a lot of photographs with full moon where essentially that one you showed of the trees, it looks like a daytime picture because you've been able to capture it with that full moon. It really lights up the valley.
And then all throughout the valley, there are places to capture reflections. So the Merced River runs through the middle of the valley, and there are places where it's a little slower. And there's a place called Tahiti Beach that not many, I don't think you'll find it on any maps or anything. But if you want to get some ideas about capturing reflections in Yosemite, just leave a comment below, and I'll be glad to see what I can do to help you. And but that's one of my favorite things to do around the valley is to get those reflections.
So if you are going to Yosemite and you are a photographer or even amateur photographer want to catch just great images, let us know, and you'll be glad to help them.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, I think that wraps it up. We are going to play as an outro my overview of the hike down the Mist Trail, or I should say up the Mist Trail, because it was quite a vertical. And we'll play that just to give you an overview of what that hike was like. And can you think of anything else?
Nope. Just leave your comments. Please let us know your favorite parts of Yosemite. We only touched on a few. We know. So we know we're missing a lot. Plus, we know we'll be going back. So we'd love to hear from you. So leave your comments and let us and everyone else know. Campgrounds, favorite spots, favorite things to bring, whatever you think is the right thing to tell people about Yosemite.
That's perfect. Thank you so much for being here. Until we meet you in person sometime, we'll look forward to seeing you in the virtual campground.
See you at the campfire.
Welcome to the virtual campgrounds overview of the Mist Trail in Yosemite National Park. This is a beautiful trail, but believe the guidebooks when they tell you it is a very popular one, probably the most popular hike within the park. And there are a lot of people that will be doing this trail with you, unless you are one of the fortunate that can do it in the middle of the week or off season. I did it here on May 15th, and there were a lot of people on the trail. This is a pretty long trail. Just to be clear, I did the loop, which is the Vernal Fall to Nevada Fall, and then return through the John Muir Trail. And that's 7.2 miles, 2,217 feet of elevation gain. So there are parts of it that are very vertical, but let's walk through the timeline. So I got to the trailhead way too late for a Saturday. 9:30 a.m. is when I got there. The trailhead itself, the first part of it is, there are parts of it that are pretty darn vertical. It is paved, and there is a water station and a restroom at some point. So, but be prepared for a pretty vertical start. And then at 11 o'clock, I reached Vernal Fall. And then by 11:30, I had reached the bottom of Nevada Fall. And it was at this point that I started contemplating life decisions and wondering why I was doing this hike. Thought about maybe turning around, but I saw this as a challenge hike for me, so I kept doing it. I'm just a middle-aged, out-of-shape dude, so wanted to challenge myself a little bit more. And then especially when I saw 3 women at that point carrying toddlers and backpacks doing this hike and continuing on to Nevada Fall, I couldn't stop. My pride wouldn't let me stop, so kept going. So about 12:30, I reached the top of Nevada Fall. Now that, between the bottom of Nevada Fall and the top, it is a very vertical climb. Some big steps and switchbacks, and I stopped quite often to enjoy the scenery, as they say. So it is pretty vertical, and that was a tough part for me. Once you get to the top of Nevada Fall, it's just a big slab of granite up there, some places to sit and have your lunch and chill out and enjoy the scenery. The falls are running like crazy right now with all the snow melt, so it was beautiful up there, and really enjoyed it. So I stayed up there for just a little bit, had my lunch, and then about 1:10, 1:15, I left there via the John Muir Trail. So that takes you on a loop, so that means you don't have to backtrack over the hike you just did. And the John Muir Trail is a little bit easier on the knees. It's not quite as vertical, and it gave you some different looks. As a matter of fact, soon after you left Nevada Fall, you have some beautiful chances to look back and get some great viewpoints of that, and you'll see some of those photos later. The trail down John Muir is not too long and not too steep, and I highly recommend leaving the Nevada Fall that way. And then I got back to the trailhead by 3:15 or so, and I had just a little bit further to go to get back to my Jeep, which was at the Curry Village parking lot. And one of the reasons it was at that parking lot and not at the trailhead parking lot was because I got there so late. And by the time I got there, the trailhead parking lot was packed with cars going in, circling, and leaving. And it was just nuts. And I barely found a spot to park at the Curry Village parking lot. So don't mess around. Heed my words. When I tell you to get there early, if you're going on a weekend, get there early. And then the crazy part was, because there were so many people in the park, I pulled out of my parking spot and sat. Didn't get more than 10, 15 feet away from my parking spot and sat there for 30 minutes or more, actually, because it wasn't until 4:15 that I was out of the parking lot and started rolling towards the exit. So make sure you are prepared for that if you're going on a weekend, but it was definitely worth it, and I highly recommend it. And here are some photos and videos from my hike. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. I'll be glad to answer them, help in any way, and hope to meet you in person one day. But until then, hope to see you in the virtual campground. Take care.